Thanks for joining us today. I'm Elizabeth Parks, the president and CMO of Parks Associates, and I'm excited to have Anthony Dohrmann, founder and CEO of Electronic Caregiver, to join me today to talk about all that they are working on. Electronic Caregiver, founded in 2009, just made several big announcements at CES, and excited to learn more about Addison Care and all of the things that you all are working on. So Anthony, thanks for joining me today and for your great support of our Connections and Connected Health Summit events. I want to start off and see if you can give us a brief introduction of your role, maybe how you got started in your career and what spurred you to start Electronic Caregiver.
Well, I've been in the connected home environment around security, intrusion, home automation for 35 years. So I've always been in the business of providing protection for people. And over the years, the demand for support for our aging and our chronically ill has increased. And being somebody that's been in product architecture and invention and mass production, I saw a lot of gaps in the market. And so we laid down a vision. We looked at some of the biggest challenges in healthcare and with our aging, and we went to work. And now, 14 years later, we have, I think, the most experience of anybody in our space.
So tell me a little bit more about exactly what it is you all are doing at Electronic Caregiver.
Well, we provide technology to lay a conduit of connectivity from the provider or the caregiver to the patient or the older adult or the person at risk in the home. And that requires a unique interface. So there has to be function and there has to be useful capability, but there also has to be something where a lot of other providers and companies have failed, and that is getting engagement from your user, getting them to engage the system, interact with it, and continue to do it. Right. So utilization and retention is paramount if you're going to have a successful program in this space.
So is this healthcare or wellness? Which area would you say you all are providing for most?
It's we're vertically integrated. We have 21 divisions. We're specifically focused on healthcare, health management in the home. So we provide chronic care, remote chronic care management. We early identify changes in health status. We interact with patients remotely and identify exacerbations. We do additional assessments. We update the health record. And then we help get, on an expedited basis, providers who are equipped with actionable data to be able to earlier intervene, faster intervene, be more informed, to fine-tune treatment plans, get people in for, in-clinic services or diagnosis processes. And in addition to the chronic care management, which is done remotely from our intermediary telecare center, we put technology in the home for remote patient monitoring. We use that for people that have multiple chronic conditions. They may have respiratory disease, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. And we're working on a big problem in the market, which is for the last 100 years or more worldwide, 50% of all the treatment failures are attributed to non-adherence in the home. We have people that are dealing with the mental stresses, the emotional stresses of a recent diagnosis. Often life and function has changed. They may be on 3 or 7 or 15 medications. They may need to remember to, record certain vitals. So we're collecting biometric physiological data from our patients. And our technology is actually automating the process between our telecare workers of doing automated interactive assessments through the option of either voice or touch in the home. And what that means is, in the healthcare space, we're taking what would be forgotten and helping people remember to do it, we're collecting symptoms and indicators of changes in health status that would normally slip through the cracks. So an average patient might see a doctor 4 times a year, and their experience of those visits is maybe an hour in a waiting room and another half hour in an exam room and 7 minutes of FaceTime with the doctor. And what the doctor experiences is a big gap in actionable data. There are things that have transpired through that calendar quarter, symptoms, pains, and different conditions that they think, I've got to remember to report this to the doctor, and I've got to remember to record my vitals. What happens is they're outside the doctor's office minutes before they're supposed to show up for an appointment, writing down all the vitals that they're making up on the back of an envelope because they don't want to get scolded by their doctor. So now the data they're getting is inaccurate. And so much time's gone by that, and in that long wait, and then suddenly the engagement with the doctor, and the doctor's asking questions and going through the file very quickly, they forget to report on symptoms and changing conditions, or so much time has passed that those new symptoms to them just become the new normal, and they don't want to report it. And so what we're doing is we're helping the doctor to be able to get the missing data, to update a health record that is more thorough so that they are more informed and can make a more competent decision for the treatment and care of their patient. From a long-winded answer there.
Yeah, but that was an amazingly awesome explanation of all that you all are doing there in the background to help patients and to be able to help them at home. Can you explain a little bit more about the impact that this has on the caregivers or the caretaker market? And that's the next thing I wanted to ask about.
Yeah, I think so. If you look at who are our customers, we serve doctors and hospitals, right? Because they have their own problem. When you look at doctors right now, and we ask them, what's your experience? They say, well, the EHR system that was supposed to make my job easier is consuming 70% of my time and taking it away from patients. There is all this missing and inconsistent data. So I have no visibility while I'm prescribing these treatment directives. I have no visibility into, the real-time response. How are my patients responding to my treatment? So they're always finding out late. And then all their overhead is up, and they'll say in the clinic, we're working harder than we've ever worked, but we've had a progressive reduction in reimbursement. So we work harder and we earn less. But the real big problem is that 33%, so more than a third of our doctors, are 65 or older with an average retirement age of 68. We are about to experience the biggest implosion into our medical labor force that we've ever experienced in world history at a time where worldwide 1 in every 3 people is living with multiple chronic conditions with rising rates of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease. We have an aging population that requires more and more care. And that aging population is about to double in size. So now we're at about 54 million. By the time we hit 2060, we'll be at 96 million. And we don't have the ability and the bandwidth to deliver services adequately to our aging population right now, who represent a lot of our people living with multiple chronic conditions. So somehow now there has to be a way, when we have a fixed supply of new doctors, only so many people getting into the profession, only so many seats in so many medical schools. And they say in the next 12 years, on the high side, we'll be short 124,000 doctors. So the industry's got to figure out, how does a doctor improve engagement, improve oversight, somehow deal with this adherence problem that's happening out of the clinic at home? And how do the existing doctors now, as the rest are retiring, how do they deliver more services to more patients when the last thing they have is time? They're out of time. They don't have any more time. So if you think about that, and it's worse, by the way, they say 1 in 3 live with chronic conditions worldwide. Well, it's more than a third. It's 40% of the US population. 133 million have at least 2 chronic conditions. So it's even worse here with our Western diets and lifestyles. Rates of obesity, all the problems we're experiencing that lead to other things. Then that leads us to your original question. What about the caregiver? So here we've got 39 million informal caregivers that are mostly family members, and they're under a lot of pressure. They're trying to manage their own job, their own life, their own children, and they now have this worry and this concern and this division of time and resources where they're running up. These people are taking out a second on a home to provide caregiving support. They are scrambling through Google looking for, tips and tools because nobody's been through school to be trained to be a caregiver when they're an informal family caregiver. Sometimes these events, radical life changes, this frightening diagnosis, comes suddenly. So they're unprepared. Our insurers right now are starting to feel the impact because the group with the greatest increase in stress-related illnesses are caregivers. And you look at the professional caregiving industry, and you can go on to Genworth, I think it has a calculator on their website for long-term care, and you can drag the slider across to see how the expenses rise. It's $20 to $30 an hour to have a professional caregiver come into the home and help with bathing or food preparation or, support for medications, grooming, dressing, whatever it is. Well, only 3% of North America has the discretionary income to pay for part-time life caregiving. That would be like somebody in for 4 hours a day where you're on a job, 5 days a week. You take the burden on weekends, and after hours. When you get home from work, you're exhausted. Now you're the caregiver because you only got 4 hours from a professional caregiver. People don't have thousands of dollars a month for 20 hours a week or 80 hours a month of service. That leaves more than 720 hours where you're on your own. So when you look at the stuff that we designed, one of the first things we wanted to do was we wanted to have the ability to have relevant function and meaningful capabilities that would make a difference in improving quality of life and treatment adherence. We always said at the beginning, we can't be all things to all people. So let's tackle the big thing. If we could put a dent in that 50% of those treatment failures, if we could help with adherence that's responsible for those treatment failures, we transform healthcare. So that's where we've always stayed rooted. That's at the foundation of all of our offerings. But once you deliver a technology connected to a service, those people have got to appreciate the technology. They've got to believe in the technology. And really, the technology should pique and captivate their interest and their attention so that you get the use and the engagement you need. Because if they don't use it, you don't get the data, and you can't push directives and instruction to your user and their caregiver. So what we've designed is, I better stop because that was the longest response ever.
No, again, you're doing a great job of explaining. I would love to hear more about Addison, but before you go there, maybe we can have you talk a little bit about technology and where you said you've got a few decades here of experience working in technology, and are we at a tipping point where things seem to all work and you are able to integrate across different devices with a platform and the systems? These are complex things we're talking about. So I'd love if you could, before we talk about Addison and some of the specifics there for the people that you all are helping, maybe touch on the technology side.
Okay, well, unique time in history. We don't go back that far. I think about 14 years in the business, And it feels like it was more like 3 years. I mean, time is moving quickly. But what an interesting time. We in 2004, we had Bush push for digitizing health records. We had, doctors with patient walls, 10,000 files, missing notes, faded paper, illegible notes, things that get lost in the shuffle. And we needed to digitize it and have, this done industry wide. Obama came in 2008 and said it's got to be completed by 2014. So there's been this convergence of things, and here they are. The digitization of the health records, the connectivity. So now we've got reliable, widespread connectivity to broadband, it's affordable, and to cellular. So we have the connectivity to the digital record. Then we had the adoption of the cloud. Cloud has changed everything, because as we were getting people on these EMR and EHR systems, doctors would get a server from Dell or wherever, and they'd have it in a back closet without an IT, staff. And this thing would hiccup and crash and be down for a week or two, and it would disrupt all their operations. Well, now we've got server farms, buried in the ice with, massive teams, tons of redundancy. You don't have the problem of things moving into obsolescence. So now we've got digitization, connectivity, we've got the cloud, and then we've recently had this push for interoperability. We need different health record systems to be able to transfer data between them, from labs to, to nuts. So we now have that. And then we had something that healthcare often, there usually needs to be some kind of big event, right? Things move slow, adoption of new processes, because people don't have time. And our doctors will say, the clinic's running me, I'm not running the clinic, and things in healthcare are changing all the time. Well, the pandemic forced adoption of telecare at an incredible new, unprecedented level. And patients got a taste of it, and doctors got a taste of it. Health institutions saw its capability to lighten the burden of their pressure and load when they were overwhelmed with COVID patients. And so this is a great time. Now, while all this has been happening, there's a lot of opportunists. This business requires this is our philosophy. I've seen a lot of engineers and inventors build stuff they thought was very cool. There are a lot of decisions maybe a doctor would make because this would be good for me as a provider. But this business takes heart and a lot of thought and consideration, and it starts with the patient. That's the subject we're all here to serve. They're the ones with the chronic conditions, and the ones with the chronic conditions that are older adults. More than half of them have some level of mental health condition that they're coping with as well. And then there are those around them that are feeling the pressure and attempting to contribute to provide support. And they're in an emotional state. They're suffering mental health issues from the pressure of caregiving. It's all got to start with the person that you serve. And then you begin to back up when you've identified their needs, and you begin to work it backwards through the technology to the provider, to all the care stakeholders, and you come up with a complete solution. And it's not one of those things, you go to a venture capitalist and everything's on a really short clock and they want really big results. You can't. I mean, we went out and we raised over $110 million, and we did it on our own terms and our own time, without an equity fund and without a venture capitalist, because nobody would give us the time to go out and organize thousands of patients, put tons of technology in front of them, deploy remote laboratories, do scientific assessment on our use of technologies to create our IoT connected in-home technologies. It's taken us that kind of money and that kind of time to get where we are today. And we always started with patient-centric. Let's give them the support and tools they need, and then we'll back it in. Well, through that period of time, we've seen all the opportunists come in. Wow, $4.1 trillion healthcare industry. Wow, we can make a lot of money here. And so they run in having not engaged the patient, didn't sit individually for an hour with thousands of patients coast to coast for more than half a decade, and put things in front of them and focus group and beta test and redesign and reassess. They didn't do it. They put an app that you download it on a smartphone or a tablet. You kind of have to click on things and go through these decision trees, right? You missed the part, guys, where we're dealing with many times an older adult who may have hearing or vision loss, who's coping with arthritis and chronic pain or diabetic neuropathy causing, nerve damage in hands and in feet. People that are coping with different cognitive disorders, people that are suddenly medicated, coping with the reality of a new diagnosis and a change in life, and maybe, the consequences of losing functional independence or the ability to live with dignity on their own. You never thought about that when you developed the technology. Is this really good for them? Is that the right interface? And so we've seen a lot of failures in the market. CMS has been providing additional codes for things like remote patient monitoring and remote therapeutic monitoring and chronic care management. And you'll see these newbies come into the market with big plans and grandiose visions about what they're going to do with their forecasts. And then they start engaging doctors. And it all sounds good. Here's a reimbursement for these 3 services with 1,000 patients. Look how much, new financial volume you can do. And they focus on the money, right? Not the care. Well, it all sounds good until the doctor finds out, well, I got to call 6,000 people to have a conversation that is not an exam room conversation. I mean, it's whether they're going to have a copay and have supplemental insurance and don't, and why they have this technology and how it's going to work. They don't have time for that. They don't have time for what they're doing now. So you got to have these conversations with thousands of people, gain their consent, formulate orders, match up, technology, get it into the patient's hands, make sure the patient knows how to use it. And then you've got, 20 minutes times 1,000 patients, 20 minutes each of care delivery and updating health records and looking over data from equipment. So what happens is they have a big idea, they throw an app on board, and out they go with their application-based solution, and the whole thing crashes because it doesn't work in the real world. So we developed technology that passes through an intermediary telecare center with people that have been specially trained to handle all the various functions of the heavy lifting to implement this for a doctor, because at the end of the day, they want to run their clinic and they need actionable data. And they need that actionable data to have been through this filtering system and validated and qualified with additional data points that a live person has to do. And so that's, kind of what we built. And we found that when we have a fully managed, fully implemented solution, and we go to a doctor and say, we know your pain points, we understand your workflows, here are the different options, tell us what your needs are, and we tailor it for them. And we've done the same work on the patient side and the caregiver side. What are your pressures? What are your pain points? What are you struggling with? Where are we falling short? Okay, let's plug in solutions to resolve those problems for you so that you have less stress, less anxiety, fewer missteps. And when you bring all that together, you have something very powerful. We can early identify signs of infectious disease for at-risk populations, get that information to the proper care, circle members, the stakeholders, to expedite intervention. We can put somebody on new drugs for dementia or Alzheimer's. And early identification is really important for that to be as effective as it can be. So now a doctor suddenly has a lot of this heavy lifting done. They're running their clinic. Their workflows aren't disrupted. But the power of what it does for the market, for their patient, is continuous oversight, a connectivity of continuous oversight with this team of expert medical professionals acting as guardians over the data and over the patients. And now what happens as the end result for the doctor is I can see in real time how my patient population at scale is responding to treatment. We'll have a patient who suddenly shows skyrocketing blood pressure. And we contact that patient and we go through interrogatories and we do an assessment. Now, that doctor finds out very quickly they're having an issue, but it's due to noncompliance. The last 2 days, they haven't been taking their medications. That's what's caused the spike. But the next signal comes in from another patient, and we identify, some troubling readings. We go through an assessment and find out their pacemaker is misfiring, and we get them expedited in the doctor's office before we have a dire consequence. Next patient.
Let me ask you real quick on the device, on the data coming in. What are the different devices? I mean, you mentioned a pacemaker. Are there other wearables that you all have? Are there sensor-based technologies that are placed around? How does that work?
In that last example I was about to give, she's on a weight scale, pulse oximetry device for regular readings, and we're taking 20 plus days of readings a month, right? And she's also got a blood pressure cuff. Now, the way we are dealing with the data is we now get a reading where she's 70/30. Now a telecare worker, an RN, pulls up the patient record, contacts the patient either through the device or phone, goes through a series of additional questions, and then updates the health record with the responses from those interrogatories, and then gets that to the doctor, who says, glad to get this. She was taking on a lot of water weight from a prior medication, and the diuretics weren't helping. So I switched her medication, and now I need to try increasing the dosage. It helps the doctor see what to do. So we do have connectivity to, right now we have 6 vitals peripherals. So we have body temperature device and pulse oximetry, which we've been able to identify when people have elevated temperature in a senior living environment. We know before Betty goes and has breakfast, lunch, and dinner with 90 other residents, she's showing signs that she may have, COVID, she may have a flu. So before it gets into the population to spread, we've early identified it. And it ties, now that triggers interrogatories for an additional health assessment. And then we can notify the stakeholders and we can take action. So we have body temperature, pulse oximetry, blood pressure cuff, glucose device, weight scale, and we have a spirometer for our respiratory patients, testing their lung capacity. Now, through our Bluetooth and through our APIs, we can connect to other in-home equipment, to wearables that are taking other readings and looking at other full, real-time variability. A lot of people wanting to partner and get their solutions in. It always comes back to, will they use it? Will they wear it? Will it give us something, beyond the data we're getting now? Now, when we get into an Addison, it's a whole new world, right? Because the virtual caregiver is asking health questions tailored to the disease profile and that patient's particular care plan. And now we can also look at things like, we've put up a medication reminder. Patient likes that we've reminded him what the medication is for. You'd be surprised how many times somebody says, what is that for? Why am I taking it? And is reluctant to take it. So the reinforcement of what this is for and why it's important from the virtual caregiver is very useful in the field. Now, if we see somebody responding and saying, yes, I'm ready to take my meds, and Addison walks them through it, if we're not getting proper therapeutic response, we can come back in with that doctor and look at the visual analytics and actually see if there's evidence of them actually consuming the medication. They might be faking, they might overdose, be double dosing, they might be underdosing on the medication. So we get additional data points. You can look at sentiment analysis, speed of decision through the visual sensor, overall changes in variability in activity levels. We even deployed a lab, and now we're working on preparing to update this physical therapy component where the Addison will be able to demonstrate a physical therapy routine, verify compliance with the routine, but at a granular level, see increased range of motion and rates of recovery, and then have that all standardized, tied to bigger machine learning assets, organization sharing from a central data lake and being able to do research at a level that they never could because of that standardization and data collection. We even have been training the system to do complex fall analysis. So we're looking at excursions from center of mass and gait velocity and stride length and time and double support and the length of the swing and all kinds of detailed data points that all come through the solution. So,
yeah, absolutely. The understanding which data is most important, I'm sure, was something you all thought very carefully about as well. As kind of our final comments, could you give us an understanding of how some of these older adults have responded to the virtual care, whether it's well received and something they think is beneficial, or if it falls into that category of another healthcare, type activity they just have to do.
We're running at incredible rates in the 90s of unassisted compliance through what we have a thing called a headless Addison. It's got Addison voice and some one-touch features through an interactive smart health hub, right? So we're getting incredible compliance and duration of service. We're retaining patients. It's so easy. It's an elegant, simplistic interface. But when we put Addison in, the Medicare will require 16 individual days of readings out of a system, right? 16 days, not I do 2 a day for 8 days, 16 individual days. Well, it becomes a real burden. You can put an app out that tells you when they're not doing it, but 1,000 people send you 3,000 signals in a week. You got to make 3,000 calls to get them, find out why they're not following through and encourage them for it. So Addison's running at 170% compliance, meaning all 16 days, but we're getting 25, 27 days out of 30 of unassisted. It's only Addison, right? We designed her to be very personable, and it was kind of a trick because people don't want this sentinel in their home that looks like a real person. It becomes haunted house at Disneyland, feeling like you're being observed by something real. It makes them feel judged, and so they don't disarm. If it's too childlike, you see a lot of these things where, oh, look, a companion, a cat. And if you've ever picked up those cats that purr when you rub them, it feels like a cheap piece of plastic inside. So what we needed to find was this thing that elicited almost a childlike response from an older adult, but also stimulated and was exciting for the kids because we got 9 million sick or disabled kids. It's 27% of our kids in North America. And there's stressed out parent carers there. And they need specific directions and a tool in the home that can walk them through care plan for a child through the developmental stages over the years of, living with cerebral palsy, for instance. So what we did is we gave you a selection of, you can select your gender, you can select your ethnicity, you can change decor. And Addison has like 10 different homes, multiple rooms in every home. Right now, the Addison behind me was in, I think, a kitchen scene. Now she's in her greenhouse. So she's looking at her nails. She's doing yoga. She's listening to music. She's doing things all the time. But you look deeper into the scenes, she's mirroring your time of day. She's introducing your favorite color into her scenes. She mirrors your weather. So if it's snowing or raining or leaves are blowing from the wind, it's happening outside of her windows as well. And then we have things for memory support and cognitive stimulation, where there are interactive objects and musical instruments and things are introduced all the time. So what's happened is when we went out to beta testing and people were interacting with their cats and dogs and calling birds to the bird feeder and discovering new things all the time with Addison. And we said, well, it's time to give you back your system. People are like, what do I pay? What do I do? What do I have to? You're not taking my Addison. There's no way. My mom has a system. She's had a serious fall that was, shattered her shoulder. Before she'd fully recovered from that, she had another fall, and it was a compound fracture, to her lower leg. And she's, got a respiratory disease. So Addison is managing her care plan, watching over her, also has an emergency response component. The connectivity is incredible. We say you have this world of experiences that's captivating the user with time of day. She's decorating for the holidays and the faith events that you celebrate, but it's a world of connectivity. Addison's connected to 24/7, like a physician on demand, a virtual primary care, integrated with our telecare center, integrated with the EHR for the primary care, the actual primary care provider. You can make calls to, the family care circle. You can access customer service if you ever have a need without searching for a number. You just ask her to make the phone call. And then she's got RF wearable devices, so an auto fall detector, emergency response pendant. You can also access emergency response 24/7 by touch or by voice through the console, whether your tablet or the all-in-one. And then you've got this Bluetooth connectivity connecting to the peripheral devices for the biometric monitoring, physiological biometric monitoring. So there's this world of connectivity that then leads to a world of benefits. More actionable data from a single solution than we've ever seen. We've integrated cloud and edge computing and AI with the RF, with the Bluetooth, with the visual analytics, with mixed reality, and with all that integration to health network. And then, and what we call atmospheric mirroring, which is that kind of mirrored personalization that happens. So people love their Addison and they don't want to let go of it. And there are companies that are approaching us and they're saying, you're going to transform the voice industry. Like we've seen recently where they said, and one of our big partners is Amazon. And we've told them this before. We built one of the first health skills for Alexa in 2014 for medication management. And I worked with it on and off for a couple months. And I said, it's not enough. I'm not going to form a lasting bond with a speaker grill. And, as it's evolved, it's just become more and more looking like kind of a clock radio, And I went, if we could give it a face and body and an environment and suddenly be able to push education and demonstration and bring this voice alive in a more compelling way, we could captivate users and it'd transform the virtual voice assistant, industry. You may not be able to monetize voice right now and you keep failing at that. But let me tell you something, we're plugging in, new add-ons coming, ride share, grocery delivery. You're going to see an Instacart type experience on this device that is going to blow your mind. Nobody is ever going to try that on their phone or laptop ever again when you see Addison step you through it. So a lot of almost infinite capabilities to get into connected home, appliance. We have corporations saying, can we tie her into access control, tie her into the security, and also do HR counseling and functions through it? Yes, we can. So I think you're going to see some extraordinary things coming from what we did that was all rooted in how do we save lives, extend functional independence, preserve people's dignity? How do we help them live healthier? How do we stack the wellness component? How do we embed some features for the aging population and specific challenges that they face along with their caregivers? And so this is all that we've arrived at today.
Well, Anthony, you all are doing amazing things. It's quite sophisticated, and I love all the ways that you have explained how Electronic Caregiver is bringing, new solutions to market that are resulting in the engagement that is really required to keep that continuous understanding, not only of a patient's vital signs or a person's vital signs, but also a lot of the other things that may be going on. So that holistic view, taking real care and thought on how you all are doing this. It's amazing. We're so proud to be working with your team and look forward to all that's to come. So thank you again for joining us. As a final sign off, I'd love for you to share how people could connect with you and or Electronic Caregiver.
Easiest way is just come to our brand new, newly launched electroniccaregiver.com website. So electroniccaregiver.com is the best way to find all the information about the different offerings we have. And our recent announcement that we made Inc. 5000, number 968, blew them away in the state too. Number one in the city, number one in our state. So, which is a sign that we're doing good out there because people are satisfied and the company is growing. So electroniccaregiver.com will get them there and they can learn about it all.